All of us have emotions. It's part of being human. And you can think of your emotions as an emotional balloon which has 4 openings. The first one is fear, the second one is anger, the third one is sadness, and the fourth one is happiness. Now, all emotions that you can experience will fall in one of these categories. So, for example, frustration would fall in the category anger, feeling a little bit down would be part of sadness, feeling nervous would be part of fear. And if you think of your emotional balloon, just imagine that as life happens, things happen, and the pressure in that balloon starts to build. And at some point, that has to be released through one of the openings. Ideally, you have all those 4 openings fully open. And if you look at children, especially young children, you see that that is exactly what they have. They have all those emotions wide open and available to them. That is why a young child can be very angry, sad, and then happy in a matter of minutes. But as we grow up, depending on our culture, our personality, and our upbringing, and also important life events, we sometimes partially or completely close off some of those emotions, and other ones might become bigger and enlarged, and we end up with an unbalanced emotional landscape or emotional balloon. So, for example, if you're a boy and you grew up in a family where you were taught that boys don't cry, it can mean that you have completely or partially closed off sadness. Or if you grew up in a family with a mother that was very, very anxious and shared all her fears with you as a child, it can be that your funnel of anxiety or fear becomes bigger and bigger. As life happens and things happen, the pressure in that emotional balloon builds. And if some of those openings are smaller and other ones are disproportionately wide, what happens is you get an unbalanced reaction because the energy cannot go through the appropriate funnel. When you apply mindfulness to emotions, the first thing that comes up is that it's about paying attention to the emotion in a kind, accepting way. So mindfulness is all about all emotions are okay. That doesn't mean all behaviors are okay, but every single emotion in itself is okay and is valuable. So for example, anger is your system telling you that somebody is crossing your boundaries and you need to respond to that. When you feel fear, it is your system signaling to you that something is about to happen or something is under threat and you need to respond to that, which is also a really important signal. Sadness is your system telling you that maybe you've lost something that was valuable to you. And happiness is your system signaling to you that things are going well. All of these emotions are important and valuable because they are part of the messaging system of your brain. The first option, when you suppress an emotion, what happens is that it doesn't disappear, but momentarily you are storing that emotion into your subconscious mind. So for example, if you think back to the balloon, the emotions that are completely or partially closed off, they don't disappear, but they are transported into your subconscious mind. Sometimes it can be very helpful because you're not always able to deal or to feel emotions in the moment. It's not always possible, it's not always appropriate. But the risk is that you end up with this backlog of suppressed emotions. And it's a little bit like pushing a balloon underwater. It takes energy, and in time, it just pops up again. The only problem is that with emotions, when you push something down, when it comes up, it's often in very messy ways. To give you an example of how suppressing works and how it can get very messy, I have a lovely but sometimes very demanding 3-year-old, and not too long ago I spent the entire day at home with him, and I was doing my very best to be a mindful, patient mother and not show my frustration with him. So what I did was all day long I was suppressing the frustration. I was holding it in. Even though he was making it really hard, I held it together and I stayed calm. But then later that day, when my husband came home and he forgot to do something that we had agreed that he would do, boom, all that frustration just pops up and is directed at him. Which is not ideal and can get messy, but it's something that I think a lot of us can relate to. When you push down emotions, it helps in the moment, but it just pops up again one way or another, often in very messy ways. Another thing that can happen with suppressed emotions is that it can come up in physical symptoms, it can come up in dreams, it can come up disrupting sleep or disrupting digestion. Emotions that you suppress don't disappear. You're just storing them, and in time they will resurface one way or another. The second option to get stuck in emotions is something that most of us will also have experienced at some point. It's when something has happened and it's upset you, and you just go back to thinking about it and thinking about it and thinking about it. And every time you think back to what happened, you get emotionally upset. You can feel the tension in your body, and you just get stuck. You're not actually thinking about it in a way that brings you any further. You're just going back to what happened and reliving that pain. So the third and the preferred option to deal with emotions is to mindfully process them. When you mindfully process emotions, you are accepting them, you're paying attention to them with kindness. And what happens is that then your brain can process what happened, it can process the emotion, and it can store that as a memory. A memory that when you think back to it doesn't trigger that same emotional response.